What is the secret to unlocking your full potential? What makes your idols any different than you? How do you become the person you've always wanted to be in life? This is where you get all of your questions answered. My name is Justin Schenk, and I sit down with some of the most epic individuals who are changing the world with their actions in business and in life. We discuss how they did it, why they pushed themselves, and more importantly, how they were able to focus on continuous growth to achieve their dreams. Welcome to the Growth Now movement. This week, I sit down with Susie Miller.
Because in the beginning, there was this idea of, oh my gosh, everything he says is wonderful. I love everything about him or her. And we kind of have those rose-colored glasses. And then we think when that fades, there's something wrong. As opposed to when that fades, there's a chance for more.
Susie is a communication and relationship expert dedicated to helping individuals and businesses reduce stress, improve communication, and increase productivity and profits. As an author, speaker, and catalyst for growth, Susie consults and trains on people skills, resilience, and leadership to help high achievers win at work and succeed in life. And as her website says, now that the official introduction is over, Susie is a game changer. I saw her speak at an event that I also spoke at, and immediately I was like, wow, this message is important, this message is impactful, this is a message that needs to be heard, and that is why I'm bringing Susie in as one of the speakers at Growth Now Movement Live, because the messages she shares from the stage on relationship and resilience are complete game changers. You will leave her talk thinking to yourself, how do I improve my life by improving my relationships? And she gives you the tips and tricks to do that. In this podcast, she'll go even deeper and dive deeper, while she's on stage at Growth Now Movement Live. And I'm beyond excited. I'm also happy that I have the opportunity to call Susie a friend. She is somebody who really practices what she preaches, and relationships for her are the most important, and I think you guys are going to love this episode. So, to dive even deeper with Susie in person, go to gnmlive.com and get your tickets today, people. They are currently only $97, but the price is going up in December, so make sure you grab your tickets for you, friends, loved ones today, and let's improve our lives together at Growth Now Movement Live in May. Now, without further ado, I give to you my friend, Susie Miller. Susie, welcome to the Growth Now Movement.
Thanks, Justin. Thrilled to be here. So excited we're finally getting to do this.
This is super exciting because as I announced the speakers for my live event, who are all people that have been on my show so far, you're the only one who hasn't been on the show, but you've been announced as a speaker for the event, and people are like, who is this person? Well, they're about to find out, and I'm really excited for them to hear you because you and I spoke at the same event, for Terry Weaver's event, actually, in Orlando, The Thing, and I saw you speak, and I was like, I need that message at my event. And I just think that relationships, whether it's love relationships, business relationships, friendships, are the most important thing in our life. It's the thing that holds everything together. It really is the end all be all. And how you broke everything down on stage was a game changer. So before we get into everything that you've written in your book, Listen, Learn, Love, who is Susie today? So take 2 minutes and just tell my audience who you are.
So today, I love that you asked that question because it's such a part of how we grow. Like to me, growth is incremental, not instantaneous. And when you talk about who you are today, it means I've continued to grow. So thank you for that. Who am I today? So I'm an author, I'm a speaker, I'm a catalyst for growth. That's my big thing. If you think about a little drop of acid, can change the compound of something. I have 3 grown adult children. I'm married to my husband, John, we just had 35 years.
Yes, and congratulations.
Thank you. And we just had our first grandchild. So, of course, being in the relationship space, I define myself by my relationships. And so it's funny. I did a webinar with 3 other men, and they were like, so-and-so's done this and that. And it was really like all their professional accolades. And my bio was, Susie loves people and needs the people in her life. So, what I do is I help people, high achievers, thrive in the relationships that matter most. And what that means to me is we all wake up thinking at some point in time, I wish this relationship was better. We don't think, oh, I wish it was like movie star quality, but we just want to be better. I want to thrive. I want this to be easy and fun and enjoyable. And a lot of times we just don't know how to get there. So I love helping people do that, especially people who are high performers who often allow the relationships to kind of coast while they're building success in another area of their life. And then they kind of turn around and it's crashed behind them. That really is who I love to work with the most. And then the other piece of me is I am currently living and working full time on the road with my husband. We are empty nesters. We're young empty nesters. And we decided to just sell it all and hit the road. So we're seeing the country. It's been 14 months. We live in this little renovated trailer. I really live in a trailer, but it's renovated to look like a house on the inside. And that's me for right now. And right now I'm in Arizona. So it's been really amazing, Justin, to see the country.
Yeah, I bet. Like, and it's funny because we hopped on the call. I'm like, where are you now? Because it just seems like every couple weeks you're somewhere else. I actually thought you were still in Colorado because you were there for a short time, right?
Yes, we were there for 6 weeks. And so we just moved this week. So we try to stay in places long enough because people will say, what's it like living on vacation? I'm like, I don't live on vacation. I work, my husband works, but we get to work wherever we want. So our backyard changes. And then we get to do kind of expeditions on Wednesdays. Like when everybody else is working, we head out. So it's been really fun. We try to stay in places for a while and really get to know the place. And it's been just a real adventure.
I love that. And as somebody who speaks on it, it's funny because I usually ask this question to people who are in the health space. And I say, you know, being in the health space, do you feel like that forces you to keep your six pack? But being in the relationship space, does it feel like an added pressure to make sure that your marriage is going well 35 years into it?
That's a great question. I would say it's the other way for me. The pressure I feel more when it comes to relationships is less with marriage than with you notice I don't talk about kids a lot because my kids, I want to respect their privacy as well. But, I think it's much harder to say I've done this amazing job parenting. And so I feel more pressure there. And when I wrote my book, I talk about how many mistakes I made. I would say having a marriage that we've worked hard on and a marriage that works has made me very passionate about helping people have relationships like that. And I think the principles I teach are across the board. So better relationship with God, yourself, and others is kind of the bigger umbrella. But the reality is, when you think about it, especially now, our kids are grown. They're 33, 31, and 28. It's just me and him, me and John. And 35 years later, we still like each other. We still love each other. And because we've worked hard to create this relationship and hearing so many people who are so unhappy or lonely or living like roommates, it makes me want to talk about it more. So I would say I don't feel pressure to make it good. I think he would say he feels pressure because I remember saying to John, we'd been married about 15 years. And we were, at that point, I was in grad school to get my counseling degree. And my parents had divorced and his parents were married still, but we were headed to their 50th wedding anniversary. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, but I remember looking at John and going, what are we celebrating? Endurance? Because they don't, now that I've gotten a little older and wiser, I understand more of their relationship. But I remember looking at John and saying, I don't want my parents' marriage or your parents' marriage. We've got to figure out a way to create what we want. Because I want a friendship. I want a soulmate. I want a lover and a friend and somebody who, I don't want to be like those people who fall in love and then just endure. And so that really was a turning point for us of we're going to either make this work because I'm not going to settle.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think he would say he feels pushed.
No, I totally get it. And I'm a great learner of other people's mistakes and I'm a big observer of other people's actions. Right. And I think that I've carried that fear of that stagnant relationship or that broken relationship into my other relationships and therefore I've ruined them. Right. And so it's almost like this fear of this could end really, really badly. And so I'm just going to be real careful. Now I will backtrack real quick and say I've gotten a lot better at that recently. I've really focused on getting better at that. But how does somebody not or learn from other people's mistakes, but not allow that to harm their own relationships? Like you said, you go, I don't want your parents' relationship, even though 50 years is an accomplishment. I don't want that. So how do you do that while still building your own? Does that make sense? Right.
That makes a lot of sense. And in fairness, I want 50 years, but not that way. I would say, Justin, it comes down to what I call the stories we tell ourselves. So we tell ourselves stories that we then believe. The voices in our head are the strongest, the loudest, and what we tell ourselves usually is what manifests in our lives. And so I was working with a client recently, and they were relatively newly married, very two successful professionals, and they were dissatisfied because they weren't connecting the way they thought they should, in quotes again, because they were comparing their relationship to like the movies. And I remember saying to the wife, marriage is nothing like the movies. Nothing like the movies,
Yeah.
you know? And so I think when you tell yourself, for example, the story of this could end badly, yes, but if you're going to play the what if game, you got to play it on both sides. This could be incredible. You know, what if it works? You know, there were many, many times in our marriage, I was not sure we were going to make it. And one of the things that people, when asked us how we did, we were never both ready to quit at the same time.
Yeah.
So, you know, and we were committed to wanting to make it work. And so I think, like, I just even love what you do with the Growth Now movement, is that being committed to growth really is the game changer. Because outside of abuse or harm, which I think you should not stay in any of those relationships, you really can make hard work well. Hard doesn't mean it's bad. Conflict doesn't mean it's wrong.
Yeah, and I love that approach too. And you know, it's funny, like, you know, the title of your book is Listen, Learn, Love, and it says how to dramatically improve your relationships in 30 days or less. And I just want to read the first paragraph that's on the back of this and kind of dive into what that means, right? So it says, whether you feel your relationship is stagnant and you want to make it better, or if you're at your wit's end and ready to throw in the towel, you can make improvements quickly. It's possible to get unstuck in your relationships. And I kind of touched on this before you and I hit record. And I think that's the key, right? Because so often in times, like you said, you and your husband, there were times where you're like, oh shit, I should quit, right? But just not at the same time, thank God, 35 years later. But so often we go, I'm in this relationship and I feel grass is greener, or this is really tough, and you just want to throw in the towel and give up. And then we do, which is why the divorce rate's so high. So how do you begin that healing process and getting unstuck process in those relationships? Because at some point, the love was there.
Yes. And I think no matter what, you have to remember the beginning, because in the beginning, there was this idea of, oh my gosh, everything he says is wonderful. I love everything about him or her. And we kind of have those rose-colored glasses. And then we think when that fades, there's something wrong, as opposed to when that fades, there's a chance for more. And so I think people think, oh, I must not be in love anymore. And I think there's two things. I think love is a choice and love is a skill. And I think falling and being in love is a cyclical over and over again. I've fallen in love with my husband over and over and over again. I've chosen to love him as his wife for a long time. And I mean, again, it's two people trying to not get on each other's nerves all the time. We're living in 240 square feet and people go like, how do you do that? So I think you have a point there. I think we have to stop and go, I have a choice. I have a choice if I'm going to grow. And I have a choice if I'm going to make this work. There's always, the grass is greener. There's always somebody who's going to be further on the path than you. And then there's going to be people who aren't. And so I really caution people to not compare their chapter 3 to somebody's chapter, 30. Like, we've been doing this for 35 years. So living in a small space, we can do it because we've worked really hard at learning each other and getting along. I have a friend who's like, I could never do that. Well, she's not at a place in her life where that would be a good idea.
Right.
So I think part of it, Justin, is really being willing to say, what's my role? What can I do differently to make it better? And then this is something that blows everybody's mind, is I think the key to a successful relationship in any relationship, marriage, kid, friendship, is, can you do conflict well? Because most of us avoid conflict. It builds up like a big, pussy, festery sore. And then we're like, forget it. When we walk away or we have a big blow up and we fight and we think something's wrong. So one of my things that everybody laughs at or everybody kind of is perplexed with is, I'm like, do you fight well? Can you fight well? Because if you can fight well, then I know that we're in it. And then I know that if I bug you or you bug me, we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. There was so much there, and I want to unpack some of it, right? So in the very beginning, you had mentioned love is a skill. Can we talk about that a little bit? Because I think that when we think about love, we think love is a feeling.
Yes.
So what do you mean by love is a skill?
So it's interesting. If you speak other languages, you realize how limiting the English language is. In German, there's like 5 different words for friend. So like, I wouldn't call the friend I have for dinner the same as a friend I met at a conference. And there'd be different words for that. So same with love in other languages. So love is a feeling, absolutely. But when I say love is a skill, to me, it means learning. In the book, I talk about loving well. It's a choice to be engaged in the relationship with the other person's best interest. So when I talk about, I'll go back to parenting. I was talking with a couple and they were having some trouble with their teenager. And I kind of looked at them and said, if your teenager hates you, you're probably doing a good job loving them because you're willing to engage in a way that make them mad that's better for them. And so when I say love is a skill, to me, it's a sense of what's the best in the long run for this person and our relationship versus what do I feel now? So let me give this example. My husband and I, he does not love conflict. And on the Enneagram, he's a 9, which is a peacemaker. And so we'll talk about, well, what do I want now? Right now, I don't want to have an argument. I want it to just be nice. But what do I want most? What I want most is for us to have a deep and connected relationship. So we're going to have to go through hard to get to good. And so when I say love is a skill, it's when those feelings fade and you choose to engage for the best of the other anyway.
Wow. Yeah. And that's so true. And, you know, when I think about, you know, as you're talking about relationships, I'm thinking about myself in different relationships and how I've approached them. And I have gotten better at handling conflict well, arguing well, before I wasn't. You know, if my ex-girlfriends are listening, which I know they do listen, I apologize to them for not being good at it in the past. And yes, I know you're listening. But you know, for my girlfriend now, like I've gotten really good at communicating when things aren't going properly. Right. And so how does somebody, and like for me, it's just been a gradual understanding of myself and knowing my weaknesses and knowing my strengths and how do I kind of make that work as we go in the future. But like, how does somebody start to tap into that? Does it start with knowing your weaknesses?
That's a really great question. I am a really big proponent of knowing your strengths. I think a lot of times and in relationships, yes, you have to know either your weaknesses or I would call your quirks, because are they really a weakness or are they just something that makes you unique? Yeah. And I think we're so quick to go, what's wrong with me versus how can I do this differently? Like if there's a problem, and the other day I did a post about the fact that I was surfing my phone when I was supposed to be talking with my husband, and I totally blew him off. And so I was distracted and I wasn't paying attention. And he looked at me and he said, you know, I'll just wait till you're done. And I, of course, was like, oh, crap. And so it wasn't mean. It was just like, go ahead and finish what you're doing because I feel dismissed. Sure. And so what I think people have to realize is I could have gone to, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person and gone to what's wrong with me as opposed to going, I'm sorry. How can I do this differently? Like if my phone is near me and it buzzes or dings or leaps into my hand and demands attention, I am going to pick it up. So differently, is that a weakness or is that, let me know myself. And so I'll leave my phone. The other night we went to dinner and I left my phone at home because the people who really needed to get me, my kids or my family would call John if it was an emergency. Yeah. And I wasn't tempted to look at my phone. So when we talk about weaknesses, what I want to make clear is the world is obsessed with what's wrong with us. And I want to beat the drum of what's right with us. And when we do something that might offend or hurt another person or not produce the best of feelings, can we ask, what can I do differently? Does that make sense?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, and I think that's so key. Instead of beating yourself up, it's about giving your best self. And I think that is the key to a lot of things, not just love relationships, all relationships, really. I mean, I think that's what I really like about your message. Yes, you talk about those love relationships, those marriages, but it pertains to everything, right? Yes. And it's really funny because, you know, I have you coming in to speak at my event for a reason. Like I saw you give your message and I was like, this needs to be heard by the people at Growth Now Movement Live. And when I told Terry that I was going to ask you to speak, he goes, why? And I go, when I saw her speak, I go, I need that message. And Terry goes, I said the same exact thing when I saw her speak somewhere else. So there's a magic to this listen, learn, love process. So I want to dive into that a little bit. Okay. What is this all about? Where did it come from? And what's the Cliff Notes version of what listen, learn, love is?
So, wow, you ask really good questions. And usually I'm the question asker. So this is kind of fun. Listen, learn, love really came from, wanting to have a foundational, easy, elegant, simple not easy, simple and elegant foundation for any relationship. And so in the book, I talk about all kinds of relationships, because to me, as I began to look at my 25 years of working with people, these three things kept coming up. And I am very open in the book about my own foibles. We all think we listen. If I go back to our core, is we want to be seen, known, and heard. We want to be known. We're made for connection. And I agree. Relationships are the stuff of life, and they drive most of our choices. In fact, if you think about it, your schedule is probably more driven by your relationships than anything else.
Yeah.
What time you get up and go, and if you have kids, where you're driving them, and your friends you're meeting. I mean, we were talking about a event you're going to hang out with a friend.
Yeah.
So relationships drive us. And so when I looked at my years of work, I was like, how do I boil this down? How do I boil this down that no matter what your relationship is, you can make a difference very quickly, 24 hours to 30 days. Because some people were like, that's pretty audacious of a claim. So I think the reality is we don't listen. We hear. But we don't pause and listen, because so often we're thinking about what we want to say in response. And so I unpack each of these skills as being something that is, because it sounds so basic, like those aren't like rocket science or brain surgery. But if you really, just this week, as you're listening to conversation, pause your brain and listen to what the other person's saying. Watch their body language, really engage with them so that you are present. And I think that's a huge piece of it. So I started looking at like, what were the things that in the trajectory of my work always came up? So that was the first one. Like most people say, I don't feel understood. I don't feel heard. Well, how do we change that?
Yeah. We
learn to listen better, right? The other piece I think is as creatures, we long for that connection. God made us that way to connect with others, and the whole we're not supposed to be alone, but we want to be known. And so how do I know somebody? Like somebody asked me, are you bored being married to the same person for 30 some years? And I was like, no, I'm learning new things about him all the time. So when I think of learn, I think about like, do you know this person's hopes, dreams, story, childhood favorite games, like all those little things that we thought were so interesting in the beginning that now we're like, yeah, whatever. It's like, do you learn them as much as you're on Instagram or Facebook or whatever? And so because we want to be known, well, how do you get known? Go on a treasure hunt, go on an adventure. I think people are the most interesting treasure that we can mine for years. So, think about somebody who brings you a cup of coffee just the way you like it. What have they done? They've learned you. They know that. I remember, and this is where this came from. I remember my middle daughter, Christmas, we were doing stockings, and the third Christmas in a row, got her the wrong kind of candy. And she threw the bag at me and went, Mom, I don't like dark chocolate. And I thought, this is my field and I haven't paid attention to my kid. Right?
Yeah.
Because she used to like dark chocolate or whatever. So I think so it was like, it's my job to learn them and really understand like moods or triggers or happy places, just all that kind of stuff. And then love is what always comes up with relationship. And I decided that when, even in business, like loving well is that whole skill of choosing the other person. I had a client who came to me, or a potential referral, and I said to them, I'm not the best fit for you. Let me refer you to this person. Somebody asked me to be on a show or speak at an event about single parenting. And I'm like, I've never single parented, but I have a friend who does this. And so loving well is the other person's best interest. So to me, they were very, there were things I could do. I'm a doer. And so if I have to grow and you tell me what to do, I can work on those things. And what happened was they started to work. I had a client, executive in the DC area was having trouble with his wife. And I said to him, okay, just do this one thing. The next time she tells you something that is frustrating or a struggle for her, instead of being defensive, instead of getting your inner defense attorney all ready to rebut, look at her and say, can you tell me more about that? Can you help me understand? Just because they want to be heard. So he did this, and literally 24 hours later, I got a call, and he was like, Susie, that was magic. That was magic, because my wife just had tears in her eyes because, really, you want to understand? And he's like, I want to try to understand. I might not agree, but I want to hear you. And so I think when we learn these skills, we think relationships are messy and hard and complicated, but there's also a simplicity to putting ourselves in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, for sure. And I love all of what you said there. The only thing that I would say that I would have changed is that I would have blamed Santa Claus for the dark chocolate, Because look it was Santa. It was Santa. It wasn't my fault. No, but totally. I mean,
she knew.
At that age, she knew. That's good. So, but honestly, like, it is really about just trying to understand, and instead of getting defensive, which is that used to be my massive weakness. So that kind of really hit home, just being like, oh yeah, that's who I used to be. And that's kind of the switch that I've made, is just trying to understand where that person's coming from. So I want to get into, we talk about growth a lot, obviously, on the show, but you also talk about growth a lot. And so when we talk about self-growth and what we want to do with our lives, what happens when our partner doesn't want to come along for that ride?
Oh, that's so lonely and so hard. And it comes back to choice. Now, I've said this before, if they're being stubborn and there's a loneliness, you have to have a long view. If they're being harmful and there's a abuse, you got to find a good attorney and get out. Okay. But let's just say there's a stubbornness, or there's an unwillingness to grow, or they're not as engaged in the marriage or the relationship, even a friendship. You have to decide what your long game is. And I think, I'll use marriage, and then I'll do something with kids. Like, making it this far, so worth the hard work, so worth the lonely years. But if you talk to me when things were really hard and we felt very distant from each other, it was a willful decision to say, I have a long game here. And I have enough good memories and good raw material that at some point, this is going to shift. Now, it's interesting about growth. Growth is very much incremental and not instantaneous. So if you have someone let's go to romantic relationships first, who doesn't want to grow, you have some choices to make. If you're married and you're in the better for worse, you're in the worse, honey. This is the hard stuff. And so you have to have a long view of what you're looking for. And then you have to have some hard conversations. I remember looking at my husband. We'd been married about, between 17, 20 years. And we had the perfect life. We had, house in the DC suburbs, big house, nice cars, nice jobs, financially secure, 3 kids who were deanless students. They were regular teenagers, but sports, like, people looked at our life and it was like, look, you won the lottery. But I remember standing in our kitchen and looking at John and saying to him, I love you. I can't imagine my life without you. I hate our life. And we're not going to make it if something doesn't change in our relationship. And this time I'm not going to counseling. You go. But so there was the honesty of saying, I can see in the future, and as our kids get older, and this is what happens, if we don't invest in us, we won't have anything. When I talk to high performers, they have multi-billion-dollar businesses, and they're lonely as all get out. They don't feel connected to their spouse or their kids. And so I think you have to have a long game. You have to be able to say, I'm willing to fight for us. I'm willing to go through hard to get to good. But make no mistake, it is hard. It is hard to be the one who's growing in the relationship and holding out hope.
Yeah, and I'm always fascinated by these relationships where people have children, and then once the children turn 18 and move out, they have no idea what to do, and they stare at each other, and they get a divorce. Like, they just stare at each other for 3 years, and they're like, yeah, this isn't working. And I used to worry about that. Then I realized I'm getting so old. If I take the time to then get married and then have kids, I'll be dead by the time they move out of the house. So that doesn't matter anymore to me. But honestly, I think that, just listening to you talk, it's really just about open communication and understanding, and just kind of knowing that. And I feel like, personally, for so many people, that's so hard to do, to get out of your own way. Right. So I want to break down something you might not talk about that often. I don't know if you do or not, to be honest. And that's self-love. Right.
Oh, all the time.
Okay, good.
Because
so no curveballs here.
No curveball. My philosophy, theory, whatever is, and even I have a framework for better relationships. It always begins with yourself. If you have a lousy relationship with yourself, and I'm a Christian, I believe in God and a creator. I get pushback from my faith-filled friends. I think your relationship with yourself determines the quality of every other relationship. Other people say, well, your relationship with God is where you start. And I'm like, well, if you hate yourself, you're never going to receive the love of a higher power.
Yeah.
So relationship with yourself is where I start with everybody. Core identity, core story, wounds, trauma, but also core dreams, core what I call your divine design, the good part of us that we lose sight of as we get older because we get told we're wrong so much. Spend time with little kids. They love themselves. They're myopically like, I'm amazing. Look, I drew this. Look, I jumped. Look, right. And we lose that. So I'm a huge proponent of better relationship with yourself as the key to everything.
I love that. And so can you use this listen, learn, love tactic on yourself?
I have never been asked that question. Let me think if I can answer that. Of course, I'm going to say yes. And this is how. If you got to listen to your life. You got to listen to your story. You got to listen to what's going on. So I have battled chronic illness for, it's about 15 years now since I'm a cancer survivor. And I have to listen to my life and listen to the realities that have limitations to care for myself well. I have to say no to things. So yes, you need to listen to your life. And I think what happens is we don't like what we hear. We hear lonely. We hear mistakes. We hear not enough. We hear, I wish I was. We hear woulda, coulda, shoulda. And like we have this committee in our head that's like just pronouncing judgment. And if we listen to them, that is what's going to determine. But if we listen to deeper stories and people who are authentic with us and truths, we can change literally the neural pathways in our minds. I'm fascinated with brain plasticity. So we can change what we say to ourselves. So yes, you can listen. So that's one place. Learn. I think one of the most tragic things is an unaware person. Because an unaware person can be like a machine gun that just, hoses people down without any awareness. Yeah. Right? And for me, I remember one day, this is 30 years ago, I snapped at my daughter in a way. I yelled at her. She was 3. And I heard coming out what would level her. And I thought, where did that come from? That's so ugly. That's so angry. And she's a little girl. And that's what led me to go to counseling. I was like, something's wrong. And if I don't do something different, this isn't going to change. And so that's what started my journey of self-growth. And admitting that we are all wounded, we are all broken, but that is not the end of the story. In Japanese, I'm going to forget the name, but they repair breaks in bowls with gold because they honor the brokenness. And I think when we listen to our story, we go, okay, what happened to me? What part of my story is guiding my life? So I found out there's a lot of things that made me angry that I didn't even realize that was coming out like a machine gun at people I loved. Right. And so when you listen to your story and you listen to your life and learn yourself, when you learn yourself, what's your personality? What are my strengths? Where are my weaknesses? Every interview I do, I have a little Post-it note that has slow written on it at the top of my computer because I talk fast. I think fast. Is that a weakness? No, that's a quirk, but I have to learn that about myself and then adjust. Yeah. Another thing for me is I'm much more of a let's hash it out now. So let's hash it out now because if we hash it out now, then it'll be over. And that's not always the way people like to have conflict. Sometimes people need time to think and space. And so when you learn yourself, you know what is the best parts of yourself and where you might need to work and grow a little bit. And then love, gosh, do you take care of yourself? My husband looked at me one day and he said, if you don't start taking care of yourself and putting yourself first, nobody else will. Like, I love you, but I'm going to take care of me so I can be the man, the dad, the husband. And it hit me upside the head. Like, right. Self-love isn't selfish. Self-love says, I care enough about myself so that I can give my best to you. Yeah. And and this comes up a lot with high performers because they're driven and we live in America and it's like the more you work, the less you sleep, the better you are, and it's a lie. It's such a lie. And high performers, don't take care of themselves. So yes, in answer to your question, thinking out loud, listen, learn, love does apply to ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And by the way, I'm a big believer in working less, sleeping more, making more, living more, and I think, and that's really what you're owning too at this point, traveling the world in your house and which is still crazy to me. But definitely something that's a really cool goal for anybody who wants to see this country. Like you said, it's just a great way to do that. Anyway, I digress.
And it was my husband's dream. So,
which is amazing. And like for you to uproot, and obviously, there was part of you that I'm sure wanted to do it too, but like, to uproot and do it for him, like that's all part of a relationship too.
It is. It really is. And so I fly back to the East Coast to my people. Like I love my man, but I need my people. And so we make it work. I think part of great relationships is enjoying the best in each other and being enjoyed. Like, he doesn't look at me and go, what's wrong with you that you don't want to do this? It's like, okay, have a great trip. See ya when you get back. So I think we really have to, and when you like yourself, you then don't need other people to like you back. You can give more to the relationship.
Yeah.
Like, it's nice to be liked and enjoyed. Does that make sense?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. That's amazing. You know, the coolest part about this podcast is that I get to interview successful people in all areas of life. And I think, you know, we all have a different definition of success, whether that's money, great relationships, health, whatever the case may be. So my question for you is, what's your definition of success? And what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success?
It's a great question. Success to me would be a sense of fulfillment and contentment in whatever goal you have. Because I think it's different for all of us based on how we're wired. You know, success for me, I'm a very driven and ambitious person. And clearly the choices I make feed into that. So I think when I think about the word success, if someone said, do you feel successful? I'd say yes. Because there's a fulfillment and a contentment in my pursuits. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So something I do, let's see. I spend time quiet and meditating and just kind of get my center with my creator so that I remember who I am and whose I am every day. Some form of exercise. Having health issues has made that harder. But even like today, I went out and walked, and, you know, to do that, it does kind of keep me in a good mindset.
For sure.
I think this is not going to surprise anybody, connection with people. Because I think it's so easy to be isolated. And, you know, one of the hardest things about living on the road is we don't have our community. And so being connected and having the few people who really know us and love us, just to be enjoyed in that way. I have a friend who called me just before our podcast and just said, just checking in. And I have a very small circle of people who have that access to me. But that level of, oh, right, I have a place in the world where I'm making a difference.
Yeah, I love that. And it's funny too, because one thing I realize is that when I ask people that question, that's one of like the 3 questions that I ask everybody. And it's, you know, the 3 things I do every day are always self-care. And like somebody asked me, like, what is from all these top performers you get to talk to, what's the common theme? And the only common theme is those 3 things are for themselves, and how important that is to fill your own cup so you can then help other people. And I think that is
from an empty cup.
Yeah. And I mean, that has been probably the biggest takeaway. So out of all these people that I talked to, last night was the first time, and you're now the second time that somebody mentioned something I do every day, which is outreach of at least one person every day. Whether it's in my community, it's to let them know I'm thinking about them and, you know, feeling for them or whatever the case may be. You know, I have a friend who just had surgery. So it was a reach out today of like, hey, hope you're feeling all right. How's everything going? And just to show love. Right. But that to me, that gives me energy.
Yes. And I think to do something that gives you energy each day is so important. And I think in our I love the online world. I love social media. I love the people I've met. Some of my good friends are people I would have never met if I hadn't ventured into this. At the same time, real face-to-face, voice-to-voice connection, we need that. And so, we need that. Babies who don't get that don't thrive. And so really being intentional about caring for the people that are in your small circle, knowing that that's a ripple that could, you know, go way out to other people. I mean, impact and influence is a really big value for me. But if I, you know, say happy birthday to you on your birthday, it might make your day better, and that'll ripple out. So I think the connection with people, we really, in this day and age, have to really be focused on it, because it's really easy to hide behind your phone and just talk to your Insta friends.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think so many times we wait for those likes, but you know, you wishing me a happy birthday on my birthday made my day better. And hopefully I made your day after your birthday better with the day late text.
No, that's okay. But do you understand by the ripple? Like, I think especially, I mean, the people who are listening to your podcast want to grow. They want to be part of a movement. They want to have impact in the world. And I think when it comes right down to it, and this is part of what keeps me sane. If you think about a pebble going into the water, it ripples out. You may have no idea what your kindness or your wisdom or your offering did for somebody that, you know, rippled out 3, 4, 5, 7 levels. And so you might not see your influence and impact, but it sure is there. And I think when we remember that, the numbers online don't mean so much.
Oh, 100%. And that's why I do this. Like, that's why I'm doing this podcast. That's why I'm having these conversations. I don't make a dime off of these conversations. You know what I mean? Yes, there's been a platform built around it, but like off of this, not a dime. And that's done by design. because it's about that ripple effect. How can I affect that one person, then affects the next, the next, the next. And that's it. You've really hit the nail on the head. So the big question is, how do people get a hold of you? How do they work with you? How do they get your book? What is all the goods?
Okay. So the best place to get a hold of me is my website, susiemiller.com. That's SUSIE Miller.com. I do have a gift about communication tips for your listeners that I'm sure you'll put in the show notes, but it's susiemiller.com, GNM for Growth Now Movement podcast. And so that'll be up there. That's a great way to get my resources. My book is there. There's a ton of free content. I'm in my second podcast, season. There's loads of information to get there for free. And then a place to connect with me that's really fun right now is Instagram. If you want to connect with me on Instagram, that'd be so fun. I'm Susie Miller 5. And, I find myself going there a lot to connect with people because there's something, real time about it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And for me, I mean, Instagram is the place people can't complain. I feel like on Facebook, everybody's just bitching about something. And on Instagram, I feel like, at least maybe it's the people I follow. It's just positive. It's just all love on Instagram, which I absolutely love. And of course, guys, as you can see, if you've now listened to this episode and you're 38 minutes in, this is why you need to come to Growth Now Movement Live, because Susie will be there and she will do a deep dive from the stage on all of this information. And it's going to be a game changer. It's going to be a game changer for every single person there. It's going to be a great opportunity for you to meet her, get her book, get it signed, do all that fun stuff. And I'm excited for you to be there.
Thanks. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to it. I love to speak. I think the first time I spoke, I was 8 years old with a microphone, and it was a church, So I love the venue of live events, and I'm really honored that you asked me, and I can't wait to be with your people and meet them. And I really do. I think for me, the biggest thing that I love about events and being able to share this message is I think it gives people hope. And I think hope is like soul oxygen. We need hope in some smallest way, that we can keep going.
Absolutely. 100% agree with you. So now I'm going to get into the 5 rapid fire questions. Some are fun, some are serious, but I ask you this: answer within one word or at the most one sentence. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Awesome.
So you mentioned earlier that your circle is very small. What's the one trait that you look for in a friend? That you don't waver on this one. What's the one trait you look for in a friend?
Authenticity.
Awesome. What's your favorite smell?
Pumpkin spice.
Perfect time for that. Wait, which one? Which one? Yeah. Vanilla almond. Got it. So if you could have dinner with one person, living or dead, who would it be?
Oprah.
Awesome. Great answer. At the end of your life.
And it's not a trite answer, because I've heard the Hitler. I think that's really fascinating, or Castro.
Yeah.
I'll expand a little bit here. It's not a trite answer. I admire, after she spoke at the Oscars, even more so. And I may never get a chance to do that. It's not I love Oprah, everything. It's just, there's something very centered and grounded about who she is and the choices she's made that inspire me to be a better person, a better woman. And I really,
I do believe, by the way, if you put it out into the universe that you truly believe it's going to happen, it will happen.
So if anybody listening knows Oprah, hit me up.
That would be perfect. Just grab some dinner, maybe sip some coffee, whatever the case may be. At the end of your life, if you could only be remembered for one sentence, what would that be?
She gave me permission to be myself.
I love that answer. Obviously, this podcast is called The Growth Now Movement, so I wrap up every single episode with this one question. That is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
So knowing that you asked that question, I've thought a lot about this hard. And I'm going to say Christmas Eve 2004. Because it's longer than a sentence, because I sat in church and the pastor was talking about It's a Wonderful Life. And he listed off 10 things that, no matter what's going on in your life, you can have hope. You can have a wonderful life and know you matter. And he listed off, tragedies like cancer or divorce, death of a spouse, death of a child. He listed like 10 things. And I looked over at my husband and tears in my eyes, and I was like, we have such a wonderful life. And my teenage daughter elbowed me and said, Mom, 8 of those 10 things have happened to you. And it was in that moment that I realized that resilience through the trials of life and having hope really was what made the difference. Because she was right. 8 of the 10 things that happened to me. We've lost a child. My dad died when I was young. I was hit by a drunk driver. I've had cancer. I mean, I really do read like a Shakespearean tragedy. The idea that resilience and hope were the foundation. I think that was a growth moment for me where I was like, wow, this really is a choice.
I love that. Susie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with my audience. I can't wait to connect in May. Obviously, it feels so far away, but it's right around the corner, and I'm sure we will be talking really soon, and long before May, hopefully.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. And kudos to your listeners, because growth is not easy, and most people don't choose it. And that's why people live lives of quiet desperation. So I love what you do. I love that you have all kinds of people and all kinds of areas of life to grow in, and I'm just honored to be part of it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.